Today is the celebration of my 60th birthday. I have just informed my students, and will inform you as well, that from now on I will stop teaching most of my Dhamma courses. In the next year I will not come to Bangkok, and will teach only at Pass on Gao, no more than 3 times a year. Therefore, when you have an opportunity, please concentrate on the teaching, because we will not see each other very often in the future. I think Buddhists should try to attain at least Sotaban level, which has been my long-term goal. I have also taught Paticca-Samuppāda for more than 10 years. Since I know Phra Ajahn, I have taught about this subject. But I will leave this teaching with Phra Ajahn because he always devotes his time and energy to you. I can see that he is still young and energetic in his early 40s. Unlike me, I am 60 years old and become tired quickly. I have several illnesses, such as poor heart condition, allergy, spondylosis, and poor lung and liver conditions. Therefore, I will teach only the core ideas, because I have no time and energy for more. Today I think I won't teach for longer than 1 hour. About Sotaban, we should listen to the Buddha's own teachings, because he spoke about the way things are. We should have faith in the Buddha's teaching. Being a Sotaban starts from the 6 sense bases, ayatana, and is divided into 2 groups. The first group is called Satanusari, the faith follower, or a person who believes that visible objects, sounds, odors, tastes, touches, and mental objects are impermanent and always changing. The second group is called Dhammanusari, the truth follower. Practitioners in this group do not use faith or belief, but they understand by their insight that visible objects, sounds, odors, tastes, touches, and mental objects are impermanent. Practitioners in these 2 groups will not die before realizing the fruit of stream entry, Sodapatipon. You should consider how this Dhamma can get rid of the first 3 fetters, samyojana, which are Sakkaya Ditthi, false view of personality, Vijikicca, doubt and uncertainty, and Silappatapramad, adherence to rules and rituals. Can you understand this? I will prove this and let you see, but I need to use a tool to do so, to introduce some consciousness. I will ring a bell. Please raise your hand if you hear the sound. When I ring the bell, everybody will raise their hand, and by doing so, they will fail the test. If I do so again, asking when you hear the sound, some will not raise their hand, and will thereby pass the test. Sotaban starts out by understanding that the sense bases, ayatana, are non-self. For example, when your ear hears a sound, sotavinyan, ear consciousness, arises. Is sound a self? No. The sound you heard came from the contact between the bell and its iron, vibrating noise that is received by your ears. If sound is a non-self, and ear is a non-self, then sotavinyan ear consciousness, is also a non-self. The Buddha teaches that Vijñāna, consciousness, does not belong to anyone. No one owns Vijñāna. Vijñāna is not in anyone, and no one is in Vijñāna. Consciousness arises because sound is heard by ears, and subsequently Sota Vijñāna, ear consciousness, arises. Now there are more than 7 billion people around the world, but no one owns ear consciousness. You should understand that Sotapan can get rid of Sakkayavaditthi, the false view of personality, by the right understanding that Vijñāna is caused by factors. The Buddha said that Vijñāna and its causes are non-self. If there are no sound and no ear, there will not be any ear consciousness, Soda Vijñāna. The sound that is heard by birds and crickets also does not belong to them, because it is sound that is received by their ears. The same principle is applied to 7 billion humans around the world, that no one is the owner of ear consciousness. When I ring the bell again, please raise your hand if you hear the voice. Probably a few people will still raise their hand. Do not misunderstand that 7 billion people have 7 billion vijñānas. The Buddha explains that vijñāna arises and ceases all the time. Its arising and cessation is like a monkey that jumps here and there, which is uncountable. There are approximately 1 million small insects around a human being, but no one can hear their sound, and no one owns the sound that is heard, but there is ear consciousness. This understanding is to get rid of Sakkayavaditthi. Is it difficult to understand? When I ring the bell, sound is at one place, and ears are at another place. When these two objects meet each other, ear consciousness arises. The Buddha said that when external sense fields contact sense doors, vijñāna arises. Therefore, vijñāna is non-self. Can you prove this when I ring the bell? Or do you need to wait until after death to prove vijñāna? Or shall we prove it before we die? Even though you may misunderstand that vijñāna belongs to you, and that it is like a spirit that continues, the Buddha said that you should not cling to this view. During the Buddha's time, there was a monk who taught the wrong view about an unchanging spirit wandering after death to another life. The Buddha never teaches that, since he always explains that vijñāna is non-self. It arises at the contact of external sense fields and sense doors, such as the ringing of a bell. Can you understand this? Do you feel your feet touching the floor? This is called Gai Vijñāna, or body consciousness. Any animal, such as an ant, a duck, a horse, or an insect, they do not own Gai Vijñāna. In the past and in the future, no one owns Vijñāna. The Buddha compares this to a far shooting. He explains that monks who are ahuneyo, worthy of gifts, bahuneyo, worthy of hospitality, and takineyo, worthy of offerings, the field of merit for the world, have 3 kinds of understanding. The first understanding is that vijñāna of anyone is non-self in the past, the present, and the future. Since you rightly understand that vijñāna is non-self, Sakkayavaditthi, false view of personality, is undermined. Is it difficult to understand the subject of the 6 sense bases, ayatana. The Buddha compares his teaching to cow's hair and cow's horns. The number of people who are on the right path is as small as the number of horns of a cow, while the number of people that are on the wrong path is as great as the hair of a cow. I do not teach any longer because no one understands. I have taught for longer than 10 years, but only a few people understand it, even though it is so simple. Why do I need to be tired of teaching, since you do not understand? Is there anyone studying? There is no one, no self studying, at present and in the future. In the future, even after my death, there will be no vinyan that belongs to anyone. There is only the contact of external sense fields impinging on the sense doors, and vinyan arising continually. This is not difficult to understand. The Buddha's teaching is something that can be verified at any time. We don't have to wait until we die to verify it. There is no limitation of time, location, or age. I think the Westerners can understand this teaching, since it is reasonable and verifiable. The Buddha teaches that no matter whether Tathagata are born in the world or not, the Dhamma, the cosmic law or principle of causal regularity, which is Dhamma, just stands. It is the orderliness of nature, called Dhammatatitata. There is nothing above this law. It is only about natural law. It is also called Dhammaniyamata, which is the law of cause and effect. When there is this, then that comes to be. For instance, when sound contacts ears, ear consciousness, sota vinyan, arises. The Buddha said that even if he did not appear in the world, this law just stands as it is. This is called tattata, suchness or actuality, which means the way things are. There is also avitatata, not unreality, which means that this fact will not change to be something else. It has to be like this. Vinyan do not arise from other causes. They arise only from these causes. This law is also called ananyantata, or invariability. It cannot be something else. When 6 types of vinyan, or consciousness, arise, 6 types of contact, or phassa, also arise, leading to happy and painful feeling, or vedana, from 6 channels. Both types of feeling, vedana, are from visible forms, sounds, odors, tastes, physical touches, and mind objects. Therefore, the feeling, vedana, is non-self, anatta. No matter what religion people are, or how old they are, the feeling, vedana, arises only from contact. This is called avitatata, not unreality, which means it will never be something else. It has to be just like this. All kinds of feeling, happiness, unhappiness, and neutral, arise only from the 6 channels of contact, phassa. After a feeling arises, 6 groups of perception, sanya, arise, such as perception of form, perception of odor, perception of sound, and perception of taste. Do you remember what you ate at lunchtime? Can you remember its taste? Think of the taste again. Can you recognize it? Then let's think of the name of a prime minister. You can think of it because you can remember it. Now let's think of the name of the Prime Minister of Norway. Probably you don't know who that is, and because you do not remember, you cannot think of it. Before the 6 kinds of mental formation, sankhara, arise, they need 6 types of perception, sanya, to form the thought. Sotapan, the stream enterer, can understand that if the 6 sense bases, form, sound, odor, taste, physical contact, and mental objects, are non-self, 6 types of feeling, vedana, 6 types of perception, sanya, 6 types of mental formation, sankhara, and 6 types of consciousness, vinyan, are non-self. Understanding this clearly will remove sakkayaditthi, false view of personality. Sotapan, one who has entered the stream, will not pass away before obtaining the fruition of stream entry. Sotapatipon, if you clearly understand the groups of 6 that I mentioned earlier, you will be able to remove 3 types of fetters, which are the false view of personality, doubt and uncertainty, and the adherence to rules and rituals. Getting rid of the false view of personality means to remove the false view that there is a self, because the reality is non-self. In this room, outside this room, and even within the whole universe, things arise through dependent co-arising. Cloud, rain, trees, rivers, canals, seasons, chairs, tables, lights, ceilings, walls, and bodies arise due to other conditions. The line in the Pali chanting, Sabbe Dhamma Anatta, means that the 5 aggregates are non-self. From now, I just talk about easy topics that you can understand. We will keep in mind this topic of non-self as the principle that sound, ears, and ear consciousness are all non-self. The Buddha also teaches that the last element of the 6 types of vinyan, consciousness, is a mental object, tamaram, that contacts the mind. Then mind consciousness, mano-vinyan, arises. Mind is non-self and does not belong to anyone, even though in normal speech we say that it is your mind or that it is my mind. Since mind and mental objects are non-self, the Buddha told Venerable Anan to go and teach Venerable Kirimanan when he was sick. The teaching was anatta sanya, which means that the 6 ayatana, external sense fields, form, sound, odor, taste, physical contact, and mental objects, and the sense doors, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, are non-self. There are 3 types of mental objects which occur in the mind. There can be unwholesome states of mind, such as greed, anger, and delusion, that give rise to suffering. There are also wholesome states, such as forgiveness, compassion, friendliness, and generosity, which lead to happiness. The 3rd type is neither good nor bad. This neutral feeling is when, for example, your feet touch the floor. So understand that when mental objects contact the mind, mind consciousness, mano-vinyan, arises, and then also feeling, vedana, arises. If you still do not understand, tamatanha may arise. That will lead to the clinging to simple rules and rituals, because you want to gain happiness and get rid of suffering. Sotapan can remove the adherence to rules and rituals, because they do not blindly follow rules and practices to solve the problem of happiness and suffering. Because a Sotapan realizes that happiness and suffering come from these 6 sense bases. Understanding that the 6 sense bases, ayatana, the 6 types of feeling, vedana, the 6 types of perception, sanya, and the 6 types of mental formation, sankara, and 6 types of consciousness, vinyan, are non-self, will also remove the clinging to mere rules and rituals. But that clinging is not completely removed. If upatan, the clinging or feeling of attachment, is completely removed, then pop, becoming, and chat, birth, will also end. However, sotaban still have them. Upatan is the attachment to form, sound, odor, taste, and contact, but the strongest attachment is to the mental object. It is quite obvious that sounds, ears, and ear consciousness, sota vinyan, are separated, and ear consciousness comes from the contact of ear and sound. But mind and mind consciousness are very close, and the mind will sometimes get attached to a mind object that has been fabricated or concocted. For example, an unwholesome state of mind such as delusion will create the sense of self, such as in thinking it is my mind. That attachment will be formed inside. This practice will reduce the attachment to mental objects, decreasing pop, becoming, and chat, birth. This is the reason why sotaban will not be reborn in more than 7 lives. It can be only 2 or 3 lives. Also, a sotaban is a person who determines to attain Nibbana. They will not go to abhayapum, or a low state of existence anymore. Their suffering is extensively removed, leaving only a little bit of it left. I am not married, and I do not have a family. But if I love someone and want to give inheritance to that person, I would give him or her the principle of sotaban. It is the most valuable inheritance that provides stable security for life, since being a sotaban prevents you from going to a low state of existence, and you enter the stream towards Nibbana. Even though a sotaban will still be reborn for up to 7 times, their destination is usually a blissful state of existence, such as heavenly beings or noble families. The Buddha compares the amount of suffering of a sotaban to a few drops of water on a blade of grass, which is very little compared to all the water in the whole ocean. The suffering of a sotaban can also be compared to dust at the tip of a nail, which is so tiny compared to all the earth and mountains in the world. Don't you agree that it is worth giving the teaching of sotaban as inheritance, since they enter the stream to Nibbana, do not fall to low states of existence, and have very little suffering? When you practice during this course, it is worth your time to pay attention to this teaching for realizing sotaban. It is also good to get to know Buddhism, because it can help reduce the amount of suffering, decrease the number of rebirths to only 7 times at most, and help being born only into a good state of existence and entering the path to liberation. That is a real life insurance, isn't it? It is a guarantee of a good quality of life. Even though you may not be able to realize full enlightenment in this life, if you enter the stream of enlightenment, you will be able to reach Nibbana within 7 lifetimes at most. It is an interesting subject that you should study, because otherwise your life will be led without direction, and you will be uncertain about existence in the next life. Now it is the year 2014, but no one can be sure whether they will hear the same teachings about sotaban in a future moment when you are reborn again, in the year 3000, Do you think you will have a chance to learn the correct teachings? How about the year 4000 or 5000? This teaching may no longer be available then. I have been around in Buddhist circles for 60 years already. Since I was young, I have been interested in only one topic: how to reach the ultimate goal of a human being. In the struggle against the cycle of rebirth, we should not be defeated any longer. It is not good if you are always going to be defeated in this fight and just keep studying about it without ever winning. You should try to complete your study by realizing Sotaban. Since I was young, I have intended to win this fight, the fight to remove avijja, ignorance. The tool of a monk who is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, and the field of merit for the world, is the understanding that vinyan, consciousness, does not belong to anyone, that it arises from its causes, such as sound contacting ears. This is called far shooting, since you can understand the whole story by seeing only one part of it. Many Thai people, even some who have studied with me, do not believe in the Buddha's teaching. The reason is that their master did not teach them like I am teaching you, even though the Buddha clearly explained it. They have not been taught that a person who recognizes that the 6 sense bases are impermanent, unstable, and non-self will attain the fruition of stream entry before they die. Therefore, not many people are successful in their learning and practice. If you have faith in what the Buddha said, you can remove the false view of personality and clearly see that the 6 sense bases are non-self. The 6 types of perception, 6 types of mental formation, 6 types of consciousness, 6 types of feeling are also non-self. The Buddha teaches that Buddhists should study the 6 sense bases, ayatana, and their cause, which is dependent origination, or Paticca-Samuppāda. Then we can maintain the Buddhist teaching that can benefit both humans and devas, or heavenly beings. The devas do not understand this principle, and therefore they are attached to 6 types of perception, 6 types of mental formation, 6 types of consciousness, 6 types of feeling, imagining that they are the self. Actually, they are non-self. Therefore, the knowledge of Sotaban is greater than being an emperor who might be reborn in one of the sensuous blissful planes or in hell. A Sotaban will not be reborn in a bad state of existence and will be set on the straight course to liberation. What do you think is better? One of the 4 factors of stream entry is the faith and confidence as a mental faculty. It is the confidence in the Buddha, not in masters, sacred trees, or statues. It is the faith faculty which can remove blind adherence to rules and rituals. The faith faculty is unshakable confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Song. Another factor of stream entry is unblemished morality. A person with a craving, tanha, for sound, taste, or form is attached to rituals and practices, because when he wants to get something, he has to organize strange ceremonies, such as bathing in the Ganges River, or worshipping trees, mountains, the sky, stars, and statues. Since a Sotaban removes blind adherence to rituals and practices, they will not believe in teachings of non-Buddhists or things that the Buddha did not teach. A Sotaban will not believe in rumors that any special person can solve the problem of happiness and unhappiness, since they are caused by these 6 sense bases. Therefore, a Sotaban will have the right view that happiness and suffering are not caused by ourselves and others. Some people still think that happiness and suffering are caused by oneself. That is a wrong view. Honestly, people with this wrong view are not really Buddhist. That is why I am so tired of teaching, because 99% of my students still think that happiness and suffering are caused by ourselves. For more than 10 years of my teaching activity, there have always been some people with this wrong view, and they do not believe in what the Buddha said. One day there was a monk visitor at my temple. He had been a monk for longer than 10 years. He said that it was us ourselves who cause happiness and suffering. I told him that the Buddha never taught that. The Buddha said that suffering and happiness are caused by contact at the 6 sense bases. However, the monk did not believe me, and he continued practicing based on his wrong belief. Do you think that this monk will become a Sotaban? The Buddha said that a Sotaban has the right view that happiness and suffering are not caused by oneself. Otherwise, it will be far from removing the fetters. However, these people with wrong view are so stubborn. Some people at my temple even said that they have visited many temples and never heard about this teaching. What I teach is different from what they had heard. Therefore, I do not want to teach anymore and will just let go. I have no energy left. Can you prove that any sound is caused by us or others? When someone honks their car horn at you, will you get angry at the sound of the horn if you understand that it is only sound and that the horn blower does not cause happiness or suffering? Or will you be angry if someone shows you the middle finger? That person might want to say that Buddhists have to walk the middle way. Does a finger know that it is good or bad? Does a finger know that it is a finger? You can try by raising your thumb, closing your eyes, reciting thumb in your mind 10 times. Then you see that what you recite, thumb, is something different than your actual thumb. Also, a thumb itself does not know that it is a thumb. Can you understand this? If you do not try, you will never understand that it is not like that. This understanding, it is not like that, can remove avijja, ignorance, that made the mind attached to the 6 sense bases as being a self. There are more kinds of understanding. The first understanding is compared with far shooting, which means that you can see the past, the present, and the future vinyan, consciousness, as non-self. The second understanding is compared to shooting objects into pieces, which is seen from the example of raising a thumb. The Buddha said that if you remove one factor, you can remove the whole structure of Paticca-Samuppāda. To remove avijja is to understand that the 6 sense bases are different from what you previously imagined them to be. For example, a thumb is not a thumb, even though it is called a thumb. The thought of Zen is very wise. They teach that if something is named, there will be another thing that is not the same as its origin. Similarly, when you give a name to a table, it is not a table. You can try by calling it several times and see if the table will walk towards you. Then you can see that if you remove all attachment, there will not be anything left. This teaching will shoot into pieces the leader of all cravings. Personally, I like this principle the most because I do not want to deal with all the types of upatan, grasping. Just focus on attavad upatan, clinging to the belief in the self. When we talk about removing avijja or ignorance, you can prove that it is not difficult to understand, since it is a law of nature that already exists by itself. If you are not too conceited and do not underestimate your abilities, you can understand this principle. However, if you volunteer to go to lower states of existence, I really cannot help since the teaching is quite direct, to remove the false view of personality, the doubt and uncertainty, and the adherence to rules and rituals. The last item is compared to quick shooting. An example for Thai people is to think of the name of the previous Thai Prime Minister and her brother. You can see that if you attach to it, you will be suffering. When an object that we do not like, for example a name, contacts our mind, then an unwholesome mind object arises. If we cling to it, we will be suffering. You can also see that if a thumb is non-self, a name that we do not like is also non-self. It is only a name or a symbol of an object, not a self. If you can understand that the 5 aggregates are non-self, how can all these names become a self? It will be like a Phra shooting, since it is the understanding that it is not him or her. But we will suffer if the mind forms the feeling of resenting it. Now you are clinging to a wholesome state, but Sotapan has only little clinging and will not cling to unwholesome objects. Since the clinging is only little and not involved with unwholesome objects, a Sotapan will not go to a low state of existence. Since the clinging, upatan, is decreasing, then becoming, pop, and birth, chad, are also decreasing, because they have no more fuel. I want to tell you that all of this is easy, because it is one and the same thing. But you need to learn what the Buddha taught, because his teachings are unique and unchangeable. The Buddha said that if you can understand this, you will not die before realizing the fruit of stream entry, Sodapatipon. I think it is worth practicing, unless you lack the interest to do it. You can also see that this topic can be studied from any aspect: complicated approach, a simple approach, a broad approach, a deep approach, or a quick approach. They are all dealing with the same subject. There is also a quicker way to understanding this teaching. For example, the Buddha taught Venerable Pahiya that it is only the herd in the herd. Then there is no you in connection with that, and you are neither here nor there nor between the two. What do you think of that? If there is no self here, there is no self anywhere. It is only ear that hears a sound, so how can it be you or a self? The path, Patipatta, to awakening is to understand that form, sound, taste, odor, touch, and mental objects are impermanent and non-self. Do you know what Nibbāna is? Ordinary people believe that Nibbāna is Nibbāna. The Buddha said that it is not the kind of Nibbāna that we imagine it to be. Nibbāna is the ending of passion, anger, and delusion. The cause of passion is form, sound, odor, taste, touch, and mental objects. But if they are non-self, then passion is also non-self. But then why do we still have passion? Can you see that the teaching is based on the same principle? Will you be angry at the horn? Will you still be deluded that your fingers, form, odor, sound, taste, touch, and mental objects are yours? If you are not deluded, your passion, anger, and delusion will decrease. It is the same principle, depending on how you look at it: simple, complicated, deep, or shallow. In the end, it all comes back to the same point. The Buddha said that we should not cling or attach ourselves to any elements, aggregates, or sense bases, no matter whose they seem to be. 7,000 million humans, ants, elephants, deer, insects, or fish. Because those ayatana, the sense bases, do not belong to anyone. This is the end of the course. Now you just need to use this tool to study and apply it. We can take as an example the wisest disciple of the Buddha. Venerable Sariputta was the chief disciple of the Buddha. Someone informed the Buddha that Sariputta declared himself as Ajahn. The Buddha questioned him 2 times. Sariputta, do you boast about your arahantship? Sariputta replied, I did not say such words. The Buddha then led Sariputta to declare his attainment of arahantship by questioning him. How do you know that birth, chat, is extinct? Sariputta replied, I know that birth is extinct, since becoming, pop, is extinct. The Buddha then questioned him, how do you know that becoming, pop, is extinct? Sariputta replied, I know that pop is extinct because upadhan, clinging, is extinct. The Buddha then asked him, how do you know that upadhan is extinct? Sariputta replied, I know that upadhan is extinct because tanha, craving, is extinct. The Buddha then asked, how do you know that tanha is extinct? Sariputta replied, because I am not attached to 6 types of vedana, feeling. Can you see the whole picture of the practice? If you are not attached to 6 kinds of contact, phassa, and 6 types of feeling, vedana, then craving, tanha, will not arise. There are 3 kinds of craving: craving for sensuality, craving to become this way or that way, and craving that things do not happen. For example, when you have a toothache and want to see a dentist, that kind of craving only arises conditioned by the painful feeling. It does not mean that you have craving all the time before the feeling arises. During the Buddha's time, they had the discussion that actually no one has craving, tanha, because tanha arises by means of feeling, vedana. Similarly, when you have a toothache, vedana, the feeling, then you have a craving to recover from it. When the feeling is gone, then the craving is gone. You can see that previously there was no craving, tanha, until a toothache, the feeling, the vedana, occurs. This means no one possesses tanha because tanha arises by means of vedana. This is the right view of Sariputta, that both tanha and vedana are non-self. If you are not attached to the feeling, vedana, then the craving, tanha, is only a purposeful action. Another example is being thirsty. It is no one that is craving for water. When the Buddha traveled and felt thirsty, he asked Venerable Ajahn to get some water for him. Venerable Ajahn went to get some water from the stream, but he saw a herd of 500 buffaloes walking by, stirring the water with mud. So he waited for a long time until the water was clear again. The Buddha was waiting for him and thinking, when is he going to come back? So consider this. Who has the craving, tanha? Or maybe nobody does. It's just a natural behavior. Or could it be tanha in the past, but whose was it? For example, if African elephants walk hundreds of miles to look for water, is it their tanha? If bees search for honey from flowers, is it the bees' tanha? You have to look at it in a different way. The craving, tanha, isn't an evil thing. It's just an element arising from sensation, vedana. Can you see it now? Venerable Sariputta mentioned that he never got lost in his feelings, vedana, and that he always had mindfulness, sati. Anyone who has learned from me knows very well that sati consists of 4 aspects. Number 1 is never getting lost in your own thoughts. Can you see? I'm getting into the subject of practice now. You have all heard that Satipatthana, or the four foundations of mindfulness, is the direct path for reaching Nibbana in no more than 7 years, or 7 months, or 7 days. But why is it some people who have practiced for many years never reach Nibbana? Now let's see why Satipatthana is the direct path. We just talked about Venerable Sariputta and the 6 sense bases, ayatana. You see, all Dhamma teachings are blended together as one. There is no separation. All Buddhas, in the past, the present, and the future, use the same method, namely giving up the 5 hindrances and developing the 4 foundations of mindfulness, Satipatthana, and 7 factors of enlightenment, Po Chong. They all teach, practice, and reach enlightenment the same way. I will start with Satipatthana and the reason why it's a direct path, the path to Nibbana in 7 lifetimes, or 7 years, or 7 months, or possibly 7 days. The 4 foundations of mindfulness, Satipatthana, are about observing causes and conditions, whether it is the body, the feelings, the mind, or mental phenomena. For example, does water really exist in an independent entity? Does it really have a name? Buddha taught us not to have the delusion. Don't conceive the water element as being such. Don't conceive yourself in the water element. Don't conceive yourself through the water element. Not all monks have this awareness when practicing Satipatthana. The wise ones, when looking inside their bodies, don't imagine the body as existing independently and having any name. The unawareness is the reason why some cannot realize enlightenment in 7 years, 7 months, or 7 days. When the tongue touches a taste, the sensation arises, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. If there is no self in them, will there be any self in the feeling? Will water still be water after you swallow it? Will honey and lemon still be honey and lemon, or will it be something else after you swallow? Will a cherry still be a cherry after being eaten by a bird? There is no permanent existence of anything. Sensation isn't a sensation. Matter isn't matter. When you are being mindful, you know when and why your mind is impure. You know when passion, anger, or delusion arise. They all are involved in the 6 senses. You know how the 6 senses create fetters that bind your mind to never-ending desires, and you know how to end that. When your mind is aware of the non-existence, it learns to let go. The 4 foundations of mindfulness, Satipatthana, show clearly that when you see a body as a body, a feeling as a feeling, a mind as a mind, and mental phenomena as mental phenomena, you will have the basis for your awareness. Therefore craving, tanha, cannot arise. If there is no craving, then there will be no attachment, upatan. If there's no attachment, there won't be the becoming, pop, or birth, chad. That's how one can reach Nibbana. If you don't use the 4 foundations of mindfulness as the basis of your awareness, you will be misguided by tanha, the craving for happiness, and trying to avoid suffering. If you don't know what causes happiness and suffering, you will be lost in clinging to rules and rituals. Now, do you understand why Satipatthana, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, are the direct path? It's because one cannot approach it from any of the 4 directions, when one can see the body as merely a body and not as a self. How would greed, anger, and delusion exist? They will all be extinguished. If we can see feeling as merely feeling and not as a self, then the craving, tanha, cannot exist. And the same goes for the mind and mental phenomena. If one understands that the mind and mental phenomena don't exist as a self, then clinging or attachment, tanha, cannot arise. Note that there are 6 senses and 5 hindrances. That's where it starts. Learning and understanding the 6 senses, ayatana, is how Buddhists maintain the teachings for the benefit of mankind. If you have the correct understanding, will there then be any conflicts? If you understand that no one creates happiness or suffering, but that in fact they come from contact at the 6 sense bases, phassa, will there be any anger or upset? This is what is called a civilized being. People are not considered civilized simply by wearing nice clothes. It has come from the development within. With this awareness, one can close the doors to misery and low states of existence. You don't need to kill, to steal, to lie, to perform sexual misconduct, or to be intoxicated in order to feel happy. Once human beings truly understand this principle, we can live in harmony. To remove the false view of personality, to remove skepticism, and to remove the adherence to rules and rituals, the Sotapan starts out by understanding the 6 sense bases. Removing skepticism means having no doubts in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Song, which means that the Sotapan does not waver in the practice of Dhamma. All Buddhas walk on the same path, which is the Eightfold Path, the way to the end of suffering. So how do the 6 senses relate to the Eightfold Path, leading to the end of suffering? When you learn about Dhamma, you have to understand the connections. They are all related, starting from having the right view, seeing that any of the 6 senses, ayatana, is non-self, and similarly the 6 types of consciousness, vinyan, 6 types of feeling, vedana, 6 types of perception, sanya, 6 types of mental formation, sankhan, or the 5 aggregates, are also non-self. Are the external 5 aggregates, khanha, really theirs? No, they are just consciousness, vinyan. Are the internal 5 aggregates really ours? Not at all. Therefore, happiness or suffering in your own feelings, vedana, has to come from the 6 senses. It is not their doing or your doing. If you understand that, there won't be any revenge or hatred or trying to take advantage of others. With the right view, you will see that there is no self in the 6 senses or in the 5 aggregates. Whose consciousness is better, that of an ant or of an elephant? Both are the same because they are non-self. If you recognize this fact, you will suddenly cool down. There will not be any insulting, bullying, bragging, or deceiving. When there is no self, there will naturally be harmony. Samma vacca is the right speech, which is abstaining from lying, from divisive speech, from abusive speech, and from idle chatter. If you understand that no one is a cause of suffering, you will not say words that abuse or despise anyone, using only polite speech. After samma vacca, the right speech, samma kammanata, and samma achiva, right action and right livelihood, will let you live your life without wrongful action to others, because no one causes suffering and unhappiness which also do not belong to you. Samma vayama, right effort, will abandon your greed, anger, and delusion, with the understanding that suffering and happiness are not caused by anyone. Then samma sati will arise as a result of mindfulness of body and mind, such as knowing when your feet touch the floor and your hands touch each other. Is there anyone still focused on the body, feeling, and mind? Please raise your hands if you have lost your focus. You need to have a dwelling place for the mind, vihantam, just as the Buddha and all Arahants have. When I was 20 years old, I asked Venerable Luang Po, "Are Arahants always mindful?" Venerable Luang Po answered that Arahants are mindful of their body, feeling, and mind automatically. Mindfulness is not abandoned, it is directed at the dwelling places for the mind. The Buddha uses anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, as a dwelling place for the mind, because mindfulness is the foundation of awareness, preventing the mind from attaching to craving. It is like a chair. When I am sitting on it, then no one else can sit on it. When mindfulness is present, then other mental objects cannot delude the mind. But mindfulness does not affect those mental objects. Please understand that mindfulness arises as a foundation of awareness to prevent craving and attachment. This applies to other elements of Satipatthana, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. We have to realize that even the Buddha still needs dwelling places for the mind, vihantam, which is anapanasati. The Buddha called that araya vihan, or noble dwelling, which helps the mind to be in a normal state and not react with craving and clinging. With this, samma samadhi, or right concentration, occurs. When the mind with right concentration and the other 7 elements of the Eightfold Path arise, then the mind can abandon the 5 hindrances, which are sensual desire, ill will, sloth and drowsiness, restlessness and anxiety, and uncertainty. It is the congregation of all 8 elements of the path that lead you in the same direction. You can now reflect how you can use the Eightfold Path to live your everyday life, since you need to think, act, and speak all the time. Right speech needs the right view, right effort, and right concentration as principles for your speech and thought. Right intention also needs the right view and the right effort to stop greed, hatred, and delusion. Right action and right livelihood also need the right view, right mindfulness, and right effort. The factors of the Eightfold Path should be in the way we lead our lives or our form of Dhamma practice. They fall into the same principle, which relates directly to the 6 sense bases, since we use them to act, speak, and think. Virtue, meditation or concentration, and wisdom are also included in this Eightfold Path. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood are virtue. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration are meditation or concentration. Right intention and right view are wisdom. I assume you are intelligent. Are you confident that you are intelligent? I want to encourage you not to look down on yourself, thinking that you are not smart. In the Buddha's time, one Brahmin asked the Buddha about the difference among the 4 castes, noble warrior, Brahmin, merchant, and worker. The Buddha answered that among these 4 castes, if they reach the supermundane states, then there is no distinction between them. Some people look down on themselves, thinking that they do not have sufficient perfections, but that stops them from developing themselves in Dhamma. In the Buddha's answer to the Brahmin about the differences of noble warrior, Brahmin, merchant, and worker in terms of their deliverance, he says that it is not different among these 4 castes because deliverance does not have any self. Therefore, I always tell you that when you practice, do not look down on yourself, thinking that you cannot learn because you do not have enough perfections or because you are stupid. It is a wrong view because it stops you from understanding. It is the view that you do not deserve this Dhamma that suits only wise people. This thought only blocks you with your stupidity. It can be compared to two men fishing at a bank of a river. One man does not get any fish, while the other one gets a big fish, but he throws it away. It continues like that until the man who doesn't get any fish asks the one who throws the big fish away for the reason. The man who throws the big fish away says, "I am too little to eat big fish." It is like some of you who think that the teaching about Sotapan is too far to reach, and you will first go to hell. Why do you underestimate yourself like that? The Buddha said that some people go to hell even though they do not deserve it, just because they think that they do not have enough perfection and they have done a lot of sins. To study Dhamma, please do not look down on yourself and do not go astray. I told you this with my loving kindness and compassion. I also have the strong intention that I will no longer teach after my 60th birthday ceremony. Therefore, you should pay attention to this course, since you will have no opportunity in the future. Do not wait until our death, after which you cannot make any change any more. It is better to learn when we are still alive. Actually, I have had the intention to stop teaching several times, but I just kept trying. However, there are very few of you who pay attention to the Dhamma, study continuously, understand and follow what the Buddha taught. I have a hope for those who do not think that they are stupid. As a human, you have enough intelligence. You encountered Buddhism and correct teachings. You also found the teacher telling you a direction which the Buddha taught, and you can find companions for this journey. Therefore, please pay attention to the course. If I die, there might be no teacher telling you the path. The teaching will be the last inheritance I could give the people from my kindness. I am very confident that the teaching of Sotapan will lead you to a safe place, a happy state of existence. Those who learn and realize Sotapan will be set on the path to enlightenment and will never go to lower states of existence any more. Their suffering will be as little as dust on a tip of a nail or a tiny drop of water. I think the teaching of Sotapan should be the most valuable inheritance that Buddhists will receive. Do you know the meaning of showing respect by practicing? You should rewind the whole picture of history, back past several 100 million years, back past 7 billion people. The strength of humans is that they try to defeat their own stupidity. They've been doing that since they lived in caves. Even chimpanzees try this. Within several 100 million years, and among 7 billion people, it is wonderful when the first person can defeat his own stupidity. It has been estimated that a very large amount of time is necessary for a Buddha to fully awaken. That time is needed to collect information, reasons, causes and factors, working systems, 6 sense bases, 5 aggregates, and 4 foundations of mindfulness before he can become the Buddha. But Buddhism will last for only about 5,000 years. That means that it takes much longer than that to search for all the knowledge. Within an incalculable amount of time, and among those 7 billion people, there will be only one period in which Buddhism occurs. What about you? What are you doing to gain this knowledge? That is the meaning of showing respect by practicing.